They told us memory was a privilege, not a right. That's when I started recording. If you're hearing this, it means I outlived their silence. My name, what's left of it, is Marcus Vale. Used to be Citizen 873194 before the registry burned. I was born 20 years ago into the Great Reordering. A world so obsessed with efficiency, it started recycling people. They called it the allocation age. We called it starvation with spreadsheets. My father worked the solar fields, calibrating mirrors that cooked the deserts for power. My mother audited rations for the Ministry of Equity. My older brother, Daniel, he wore the badge. Security Bureau, blue stripe on the arm, perfect posture, perfect liar. He sold me. Not for money, there's no money anymore. But for credits. A promotion, better housing, the right to have a child. I was the cost of his future. You think betrayal is dramatic? It's paperwork. He filed my name under data dissident. The drones came before sunrise. No warning, just the hum of rotors and the smell of melted ozone. My mother cried into her ration sleeve while he stood behind her, eyes dry. That's the moment my faith died. Not in the system. In blood. They took me to South Point Detention and Processing. Sounds bureaucratic, doesn't it? It's a mining camp built under glass domes, where the sun burns white all day and frost creeps in at night. We dug lithium from the salt plains to feed the batteries that power their cities. Every breath tasted like metal. I lasted 2 years. 2 years of numbers carved into my wristband. 2 years of corporate hymns piped through loudspeakers. 2 years of watching good men forget their names. They taught us slogans, sacrifice is sustainability. But survival, real survival, is defiance whispered under your breath. There was a guard named Ren. He used to smuggle old-world chips into the camp. Stories, music, even news archives from before the blackout. He said knowledge was currency, and I paid attention. He taught me to read the static between the state frequencies. That's how I learned my brother had been promoted to Regional Director of Compliance. My name appeared on one of his reports. Classification, irretrievable. Dead. I guess he needed closure for the paperwork. The irony. Being declared dead set me free. During a sandstorm evacuation, I crawled into a drone hauler and rode it 30 miles north. They never checked the cargo bays two beneath them. When the hatch opened, I rolled out onto open salt, half blind, half alive. I walked for 3 days. The horizon shimmered like glass on fire. When I found the ruins of an old way station, I found other ghosts there. Runaways. People who'd slipped through the algorithms. We called ourselves the Unindexed. No chip implants, no registry. Off-grid meant off-record. That's where the real rebuilding began. Not cities, but selves. We scavenged, coded, rewired the drones that hunted us. We turned surveillance eyes into mirrors. I became their archivist, collecting testimony from anyone who remembered the world before order became religion. I still dream of Daniel sometimes. In the dream, he's not my brother. Just a man with my face wearing someone else's uniform. I wake up tasting dust and rage. 2 winters later, one of our scouts found a crashed transport near the ridge. Inside were data cores marked Ministry of Equity. I cracked them open with a stolen decrypt key. Why saw made the whole allocation system unravel in my head. Turns out the energy shortage, the one that justified the ration laws, was fabricated. They'd been exporting surplus power to the orbital colonies while telling us to eat protein dust. And the authorizing signature on those transfers? Daniel Vale. That night, I stopped being a survivor. I became a weapon. We built a signal rig from scavenged towers and copper cable. I recorded everything, documents, images, proof, and spliced it into the public grid. We hijacked broadcast satellites for 47 seconds. Enough for the world to see the truth. Enough for him to choke on it. 47 seconds of freedom cost us 33 lives. They came with drones, fire, and propaganda. But they couldn't unsee what we showed them. That's when whispers started. That the ministry was cracking, that compliance was compromised. I vanished into the waste again. Changed my voice print. Changed my face under ultraviolet scars. You can't kill a story once it's heard. So here I am, broadcasting from the old relay hub at Ridge 9. Power's dying, but my signal still cuts through the static. I'm not asking for pity. I want witnesses. Because the truth is, the system didn't fall overnight. It rotted from the inside, starting with families who chose comfort over conscience. People like my brother. And people like me, who finally learned that justice isn't granted. It's taken. We thought freedom would taste clean. It didn't. It tasted like dust and burnt copper. But it was ours. The Unindexed grew from whispers to a pulse. We didn't build cities, we built signals. One relay at a time, one hijacked frequency after another. We learned to speak through interference. Every night we'd crawl through the rusted pipelines beneath the solar fields. Above us, drones patrolled with their soft blue eyes. Below us, old conduits hummed with forgotten power. We turned them into arteries of rebellion. Our base was a derelict desalination plant. Salt walls white as bone. We called it the Brine House. The first night there, I slept beside a broken filtration pump, dreaming of the ocean I'd never seen. When I woke, I found Nova sitting across from me. Engineer, smuggler, cynic. She was soldering circuits with a glare that could melt steel. Vale, she said, you talk big about truth. What happens when people don't want it? I told her, they'll want it when it costs them enough. She smirked. Then let's raise the price. For months, we intercepted supply convoys, taking food, medicine, batteries. Not for profit. For leverage. Every stolen crate carried a message: the ministry can't protect you. And it worked. Cities started locking down. People whispered the word unindexed like a curse and a prayer. The Bureau's response was elegant cruelty. They introduced echo law. If a family member defected, every relative lost privileges. Rations, travel, healthcare gone. They turned blood into shackles. That's when I knew Daniel would come for me himself. I still remember the first time I heard his voice again. Not in person, through a hacked broadcast. We were tuned to frequency 118.6, a state channel for compliance updates. Static cracked, then his voice cut through like a blade. To the so-called unindexed, your cause is a mirage. You've mistaken chaos for courage. Return to the fold, and your records will be restored. Persist, and you'll vanish as completely as the data you worship. I laughed. Nova didn't. She looked at me the way a medic looks at a patient already bleeding out. Your brother's good, she said. Too good. You sure you're ready to fight someone who still knows how you think? I wasn't sure. But I didn't say that. We needed a strike, something undeniable. The plan was simple and suicidal. Infiltrate the Bureau's data center in Port Helix, download the allocation protocols, and broadcast them. If the world saw the quotas, the selective starvation algorithms, it would ignite. Getting there meant crossing the border spine, a 200-mile stretch of electromagnetic fences and storm walls. We traveled at night, cloaked by sandstorms. Every gust scraped skin from bone. The horizon flashed with lightning from weaponized clouds. We lost 2 people before dawn. By the 3rd night, our suits were scorched and our rations gone. Nova's oxygen line cracked. I patched it with a strip of my own sleeve. She didn't thank me, just said, "If I die, you finish the upload." I told her, "If you die, I burn the world." We reached Port Helix at sunrise. The skyline looked like a field of knives catching light. Every building bore the ministry sigil, an eye wrapped in wire. We slipped in through the drainage tunnels. The smell, ozone, disinfectant, fear. Inside the data center, machines pulsed like heartbeats. I found a core server room, rows of mirrored towers humming with secrets. Nova jacked in the drive. Numbers cascaded across the screen, billions of names, consumption logs, productivity scores. And buried inside, a project labeled Arbiter Blue. "What's that?" she asked. I opened it. A live feed. Prison camps. Children sorting through e-waste under armed watch. Each image tagged with resource renewal. Nova whispered, "They're recycling people." I hit record. Everything in me burned. That's when alarms howled. The room filled with red light. Drones dropped from ceiling ports. We're in. Bullets in the allocation age don't tear flesh, they cauterize. Nova caught one through the shoulder. I dragged her through coolant mist, clutching the drive. We burst into a maintenance shaft, sliding down 10 stories into a recycling chute. The fall cracked my ribs. Pain became background noise. We crawled through sludge until we reached open air. The city behind us screamed with sirens. Above, a patrol shuttle circled like a vulture. Nova was pale, bleeding silver from the cauterization gel. She pressed the drive into my palm. "Finish it," she said. Then her eyes unfocused, staring at a sun that didn't forgive. I buried her under the salt crust. No marker, just silence. The sand covered her faster than I could pray. That night, I hacked a maintenance drone and piggybacked on its transmission path. I uploaded the data to every public terminal in the district. For 9 minutes, the world saw the unfiltered truth. Factories built on human batteries. Executions relabeled as reallocation. And the final authorizing code, Vale 7. My brother's signature. The Bureau called it a terrorist fabrication. But you can't unsee 9 minutes. Riots broke out in 6 provinces. Ministry servers crashed under citizen logins. The illusion fractured. I watched from a roof while flames climbed the skyline. Broadcast towers melted like candles. For the first time, I felt something close to hope, and it terrified me. Then the loudspeakers came alive again. Daniel's voice, calm as poison. "Marcus Vale, you've made your point. But know this, truth without control is anarchy. And anarchy will bury you before I do." I laughed until my throat bled. Then I packed the transmitter. If he wanted control, he'd have to come take it himself. That's how the second phase began. We stopped broadcasting facts. We started broadcasting fear. I fed the Bureau its own data, fake directives, phantom orders. Officers arrested each other. Drones patrolled empty coordinates. The machine began to eat itself. But every move I made, he countered. He knew my patterns, my phrasing, my pulse. Once, he sent a single message to the relay. "You're not saving anyone, little brother. You're just proving me right." I smashed the console. But I couldn't shake the sound of his voice. It lived in the static after the transmission ended. That's where I am now. Halfway between signal and silence. The city below burns its own archives. The skies above hum with drones that have no master. And me? I'm still recording. Because stories outlive systems. And I'm not done yet. Understood, continuing in the same voice and pacing. The maps said the north was dead. Maps lie. They always have. After Port Helix, the ministry sealed the southern corridors and flooded the pipelines with ammonia. Cities went dark one by one, and the Bureau called it preventative de-energization. Starvation by switch. I headed north because the south knew my shadow. I needed a place where my brother's voice felt thin. I needed cold to harden the fire. The first week was a geography of bones. Wind turbines half buried in snow, their blades frozen mid-prayer. Collapsed greenhouses glittering with ice like cathedrals. Rail lines ending at cliffs where the sea had eaten the land. I walked with my transmitter wrapped in oilcloth and my ribs wrapped in tape. Every breath pinched. I kept moving anyway. On the 9th day, I found a tunnel mouth by accident. A vent in the permafrost exhaling warm air like a sleeping animal. I climbed down a shaft slick with condensate and old grease. At the bottom, a steel door waited with a keypad that hadn't blinked in years. I knocked. Sometimes you don't need codes. A small slot opened. Two eyes, gray as winter sky, studied me. Name, a voice said. Marcus Vale. Silence. Occupation. Witness. A long breath. The door opened. They called the place Boreal II. It had been a cryologistics hub before the allocation age. A warehouse for seeds, vaccines, and experimental algae strains that could eat carbon like sugar. Now it was a city of the uncounted. They lived between racks of inert freezers and slept in hammocks strung across old conveyor rails. Everywhere I looked, warmth fought metal. An older woman with hair cut blunt to the jaw stepped forward. Captain Alara, she said, though there were no ships left to command. You're the voice from the ridge. I nodded. I'm the echo that didn't die. Her eyes flicked to my ribs. Medic, she called. Hands guided me to a cot that smelled of wool and iodine. While a boy stitched me in careful knots, Alara told me their ledger of survival. They had power from geothermal vents, water from melt capture. Crops lit by old grow arrays they rotated to confuse the grid's eyes in case anyone was listening. They were, I said. They always are. She didn't flinch. Then we'll speak in old ways. And for the first time in years, I saw people talk with their hands. A silent language older than surveillance, older than microphones. Their fingers wrote storms. They fed me broth thick with protein and apology. We heard your 9 minutes, Alara said. Then the Bureau jammed everything. We've been deaf since. I unwrapped the transmitter. Let's fix your hearing. Boreal II had what we never did in the South. Time. No drones flown this far. The storm shredded their wings. No patrols on the ice roads. Fuel was a rumor. So we built. We wired a mast through the old cooling towers and anchored it with stolen bridge cable. We scavenged copper from dead turbines and braided it into a coil big as a whale rib. I tuned the array with numb fingers while a girl named Sanaa read me voltages in a voice like flint. When the needle steadied, the room exhaled. The first message was simple. 4 words. We can hear you. We sent it at low power across the shortwave band. Then we waited. Patience is a weapon if you know how to hold it. 3 days later, replies slipped in like animals too cautious for open ground. Crackled voices from places I thought erased. A fishing village that traded hooks for insulin. A mountain commune growing potatoes under mirrors. A convoy of teachers turning freight trucks into schools. I logged them all. Names, needs, promises. At night, Boreal II told stories. Not myth, memos. Alara collected them, same as I did, but with a sailor's eye for weather. Currents, she said, pointing to our wall of frequencies. You ride the ones that won't drown you. In those weeks, my anger sharpened its edges. This wasn't a camp of victims. It was a harbor for weapons that chose their targets. They asked about Daniel. I told them he was a man who learned to pass as a system. That's all the ministry is, Alara said. Men in uniforms pretending to be gods. Gods bleed, Sana added, tying off a length of wire with her teeth. We built a second rig for redundancy and a third for stubbornness. We seeded our network with recorded testimonies from the Unindexed in the south and relayed requests for medicine and seeds northward in exchange for encryption schematics. Traffic became trust. On the 34th day, the snow settled like ash. I was on tower duty when the needle spiked without a broadcast. A carrier wave with no voice riding it. A doorbell pressed and held. I cut through the hum, tuned tighter, and there it was. A code I hadn't heard since South Point. Vale priority. I didn't tell them it was my brother's tag. I just recorded. The voice came seconds later, poured through a filter to sound like metal and law. To all stations in violation, compliance and amnesty remain available. Failure to present will result in permanent de-indexing. This is your final courtesy transmission. Then a softer click, intimate as a whisper. Another line nested inside the first like a blade inside a cane. Marcus, I know you're listening. Come home. I let the wind answer for me. That night, I told Alara the truth. She didn't blink. You'll have to cut the root then. I don't do forgiveness, I said. Good, she said. Forgiveness makes poor fertilizer. We planned the winter campaign like carpenters, not generals. Measure twice, cut once, brace for the weight. Our goal wasn't to topple the ministry. That's how you build new tyrants. Our goal was to hollow it until it collapsed under its own ceremony. 3 prongs. First, flood the allocation ledgers with impossible arithmetic. Negative hunger, surplus illness, work hours that exceeded the length of days. Second, leak the names of mid-level officials who signed off on community blackouts. No elite scapegoats, just the neighbor who smiled while he filed. Third, open safe corridors north where families could defect without being harvested by the spine. I took the second prong personally. Names are knives if you sharpen them, right? We built a site that required no chip to access. You could open it by tapping 2 pieces of metal together near a receiver. On it, we posted signatures along with the rations they received as reward. No commentary. Just the math of betrayal. The first week, 3 officials resigned and disappeared. The second week, there were demonstrations in markets. People turning their backs to cameras at noon. A silent quorum. By the third week, compliance officers began wearing masks. If they were ashamed, I didn't care. Shame is a luxury for people who survive their choices. Sanaa proved to be a better coder than anyone I'd met in the South. She could mimic a bureau heartbeat so perfectly their drones saluted our towers. She also spoke like a hammer. Your brother still owns the air down there, she said. Then we teach the air a new owner, I said. We trained runners to write the 4 words of our first message onto walls, into snow, under bridges. We can hear you. Each phrase a spark. Each spark a map. In February, the northern lights came like green rivers. The children stood on the loading dock with their mouths open, as if color was a language returning to a throat. I stood beside Alara, my breath a cloud. Once, she said, navies use stars to navigate. Now we use strangers. We knew the Bureau would strike. We didn't expect their shape. They didn't send troops. They sent relatives. Echo Law found its teeth in the north. One morning, a convoy of sled tractors appeared on the ridge, flags white as bone. A woman stepped forward from the lead cab and removed her hood. Her face was my mother's age. Her eyes were my childhood. "Marcus," she said, and a memory cracked open like thawing ice. Aunt Lisa. She had raised me summers when the solar fields baked our town. She taught me to make bread with salt and patience. She had laughed in a way that made rooms lighter. Now her laugh had been repossessed. "They took my credits," she said. "They gave me a choice, bring you in or watch your cousins lose their medicine." Behind her, two boys stared at their boots like the ground was guilty. Alara stood at my shoulder, silent. Boreal II had rules for parley. You talk in the open. You show your hands. I stepped forward until I felt the cold in my teeth. "This is the part," I said, "where I'm supposed to forgive you for trying." She flinched. "I'm not asking forgiveness," she said. "I'm asking for instructions." Some betrayals are born of hunger, not ambition. It doesn't make them smaller. It makes them common. I looked at the boys, then at the convoy. I turned to Alara. "Open the east gate," I said. "Strip the engines. Keep the fuel. Burn the flags." I faced Lisa. "You can stay," I said, "and work. Or you can go, and I'll pray the spine doesn't recognize your heat signatures." Her mouth trembled, then set. "We'll work," she said. Forgiveness would have given them comfort and left us weak. Work gave them dignity and kept us alive. The convoy brought news as well as engines. In the South, compliance had declared civic purity weeks. Neighbors turning in neighbors for audit reviews. They called it participation. I called it harvest. We accelerated the corridors. Every night, small groups moved by moon and map. We timed crossings with weather and with bureau shift changes. Alara assigned me to the radio, to be the voice they heard when they were most afraid. "Why me?" I asked. "Because you know what to say when the world narrows to the size of a footstep," she said. So I said it into the cold, into their ears, into my own chest. Left of the broken pylon. Stop when you hear the wind change pitch. You're doing it right. You're doing it right. One night, a family of 6 crossed with a sled carrying a metal trunk. Inside were papers. Old-world printed contracts, property deeds, birth certificates with ink and signatures. Talisman against deletion. The father placed them in my hands. "We kept them," he said, "because someone told us to keep proof of ourselves." "Who?" I asked. He frowned, as if confused by the shape of the memory. "Your broadcast," he said. "The 9 minutes. That's when I learned what a story can do. It can turn paper into armor. It can turn a man into a direction." Spring came shaved thin, like a ration. The snow retreated from the river mouths, and the ice broke with a sound like glass learning a new name. We traded for dried fish and tools. We taught the children to climb towers and listen for weather in the wires. Each day felt borrowed from an enemy accountant. Then, in the thin blue morning, the mast shuddered. Not wind. An electrical kick, precise as surgery. Sanaa swore softly. "Pinpoint strike," she said. "They found our carrier wave." The board lit with a single incoming transmission. No header. No origin. But the cadence in the static was a fingerprint I knew better than my own. "You're not a witness anymore, Marcus," Daniel said. "You're a broadcaster. Broadcasters have addresses." Alara's mouth became a straight line. Sanaa's hands hovered over the kill switch. I shook my head. "Let him speak," I said. "You can keep your little colony warm for another season," he went on. But the cold you're hiding from isn't weather. It's history. And history doesn't forgive men like you. I leaned to the mic. Good, I said. I'm not asking it to. He paused, and in the pause I heard the room around him. The slap of paper on desks. The low hum of recycled air. The small, priestly cough of a bureaucrat waiting to draft my afterlife. Come home, he tried again, the words like a rope sent across a ravine. We'll fix it. I'll fix it. I could have said 100 things. Instead, I said the only true one. You broke it. The line went dead. Outside, the wind carried a taste of thaw and iron. Alara put a hand on my shoulder, a weight like command. He'll come, she said. I know, I said. Then meet him where he thinks he's safest, she said. Not in halls. In stories. We spent the next month building what Sana called the orchard. It wasn't trees. It was a forest of repeating transmitters seated across the north like dandelion clocks. Any time one fell, 5 more bloomed. Each carried fragments of testimony, instructions for corridors, and the ledgers of small betrayals. We didn't need a single tower anymore. We needed 1,000 leads. I recorded news segments at night when the generators coughed less. I spoke not to the south or the north, but to the space between, the seam where decisions are stitched. I told them how Echo Law turned family into a weapon and why a weapon is only as honest as the hand that holds it. I told them when to hide and when to run and when to stand very still and breathe until the sensor gets bored. I told them to keep paper. Always keep paper. At the end of each broadcast, I said my name. Not the registry number. The one that tasted like iron and bread. Marcus Vale. People began to say it back on their own transmissions. Not as devotion, but as direction. Then the Bureau blinked. For a brief, crystalline week, their channels went quiet. No directives, no praise liturgy, no compliance hymns at dawn. Silence big as a cathedral. I felt hope move like an animal under my ribs. Alara felt it too and stayed very still, like a hunter who knows bait when she smells it. On the 8th day of quiet, the sky flashed. Not lightning. Something cleaner. Crueler. The generators burped and died. The orchard dimmed like a field of candles in rain. Sana cursed so softly, it sounded like prayer. EMP, she said. Backup systems kicked like mules. We had planned for this. We always planned for this. But planning is just a map. Now we were back on the ground. The mast groaned. Bolt screamed. I ran the length of the deck with a wrench in my hand and fear in my throat. We braced the guy wires with everything that held weight. Engines, drums of desal brine, a piano someone had hauled north as a joke against despair. We held. When the lights stuttered back, we listened. Not for Daniel. For the people. They were still there. Voices reduced to thread, calling names like throwing ropes. We tied knots in every rope. Night bled into morning. My hands shook from adrenaline and cold. I leaned my forehead against the transmitter rack. I thought of Nova under the salt and the 9 minutes that had broken the spell and the 2 boys staring at their boots because adults had made shame a climate. And I decided I would go south again. Not to forgive. To finish. Alara didn't argue. She packed rations with the care of a mother and the speed of a captain. Then handed me a small tin. Inside were paper cards, each printed with 4 words in a dozen languages. We can hear you. Drop them where you must, she said. People believe what they can hold. Sana gave me a palm-sized transmitter, the color of smoke. Piggybacks any legal channel within 50 meters, she said. Looks like a rock to cameras. Like me, I said. She smiled with half her mouth. Try not to die, she said. Aunt Lisa pressed bread into my hands, warm from a stove welded out of 3 different eras. Bring back something worth the flour, she said. I'll bring back silence, I said. I didn't add. We left before dawn. Me, 2 runners named Eco and Meyer, and a sled piled with more hope than sense. The river was a road of glass. We moved fast, anchors clicking, poles skimming. The sky pinked and the world looked briefly forgivable. I didn't forgive it. For a while, the trip was just breath and rhythm. Then the weather shifted like a mood. Wind rose. Snow came sideways. We hunkered under a rock lip and ate bread that tasted like decisions. Meyer fell asleep with her hand still on the anchor rope, as if the world might slide away in her absence. By twilight, we reached the spine's shadow. The electromagnetic fence purred, invisible but real enough to make the hair on my arm stand. We followed its rhythm like thieves listening to a guard's boots. At a gap we'd mapped months before, the hum thinned. Sanaa's little transmitter coughed a soft click. Eco looked at me. No, I said. We slid under history. On the far side, the air smelled different. Old smoke and new fear. The south. We cached the sled in scrub and moved on foot toward the city that had once named my brother its spine. Helix's ruins fingered the horizon. Black glass and stubborn steel. We traveled alleys, ducked shadows. I dropped cards and thresholds and under doorstones. We can hear you. At the edge of the civic plaza stood the building where he kept his desk and his lies. Compliance headquarters, blue stripe washed pale by soot. Floodlights swept the square like bored gods. Eco and Meyer melted into dark like good ghosts. I walked into the light. Sometimes the shortest path is the one no one expects you to take. At the door, a scanner blinked awake. I rested Sanaa's rock in the palm of the access plate. It chirped like a dream and turned green. I went inside to finish the story. Here's how I bring it home for you. The door closed behind me with a sigh like something giving up. Fluorescent light, white as judgment, flickered overhead. The air smelled of ozone and paper. Inside, the bureau was quieter than I remembered. Too quiet. No clerks moving data slates, no hymn from the loudspeakers. Just the hum of machines pretending to breathe. My boots left salt on the tile. I didn't bother to hide. Let the cameras see. Let them remember the man they buried alive. A security drone rolled out of a side corridor, optics whirring. Identification, it said. I held up Sanaa's transmitter. The green light blinked once, obedient. The drone stepped aside. Daniel had taught me once, systems only fail when they believe they can't. He built a world on that faith. I was here to make him doubt. The elevator recognized my gate. It shouldn't have, but ghosts keep their passwords. 30 floors up, the city unfolded through glass like a wound refusing to close. His office door was open. Always the dramatist. He sat at a long desk, uniform crisp, hands folded as if in prayer. For a moment, we looked like reflections separated by time. Marcus. He said my name as if it still belonged to him. You look tired. You look expensive, I said. He smiled, a habit, not an emotion. You could have had this, he said, gesturing to the city. Order, safety, power. I had a family, I said. You sold it. He stood slowly. You think you're the first revolutionary to call me a traitor? No, I said, just the last one you'll hear from. He tapped the console on his desk. Screens flared to life. Live feeds from the north, the east, the refugee corridors. Every camera showed smoke, movement, signals. The orchard, he said. You built a plague. I built a choice, I said. Do you even know what comes after you win? He asked. Yes, I said. Silence. And that's enough. He circled the desk, close enough that I could see the lines the years had carved around his mouth. You always mistook noise for freedom, he said. And you mistook obedience for peace. We were two equations canceling each other out. He reached for a drawer. I reached faster. My hand found the sidearm first. Old model, still lethal. He froze, palms up. You want to kill me, little brother, he said. No, I said. I'm going to broadcast you. I tossed Sanaa's rock onto the desk. Its hidden core pulsed. Every microphone in the building turned toward us. Every dormant camera woke. You wanted to speak for the system? I said. Here's your audience. He straightened, old pride crawling back into his shoulders. This is your justice? Spectacle? This is memory, I said. They took that from us. I'm taking it back. He looked straight into the nearest lens. I did what was necessary, he said. Someone had to keep the lights on. You burned the world to do it, I said. He turned to me. You never understood cost. I understand debt, I said. And I'm collecting. I fired once, not at him, but at the glass behind him. The pane exploded into daylight. Wind screamed through the room, carrying paper as his voice. Below, the plaza filled with people looking up. I stepped back, weapon lowered. Your system's over, I said. He laughed, quiet, almost gentle. No, Marcus. Systems never end. They just change uniforms. He lunged. We crashed against the desk, the gun spinning away. Fists, elbows, breath, years of silence, all of it colliding. He was stronger, but rage is a better fuel than duty. I drove him toward the broken window. For a heartbeat, we were children again, arguing over who got the larger share of sunlight. Then he slipped. The city took him. I stood there, listening to the wind roar through the frame. No triumph. Just weight lifting, leaving hollowness behind. The console still glowed. I keyed open the master feed. Across every channel, my face replaced his. This is Marcus Vale, I said. No titles, no rank, no registry. Just a man telling you that the era of permission is over. You don't need their algorithms to eat, or to dream, or to remember. Keep what's true. Write it down. Share it when it's safe. Because memory is the only thing they can't ration. I left the feed running and walked out through the shattered door. No alarms. No pursuit. Just the wind carrying my brother's echo into distance. Down on the street, people were gathering, faces lifted, eyes squinting against new light. Someone pointed at me. No cheers, no chants. Just a long, shared breath. I turned east, toward the sound of the sea I had never seen. Every step was lighter than the last. Behind me, the towers burned with the color of beginnings. If you're hearing this, it means the transmitters survived. Maybe the orchard is still blooming. Maybe the world finally learned to speak without permission. Either way, remember this. Freedom isn't forgiveness. It's the refusal to forget. In transmission,